Hey, in the next 10 minutes we'll be painting a really cool environment landscape from scratch. I'll show you guys all the main steps. Stay tuned till the end to check out some tips and ideas on how you can improve your composition. Alright, let's start. First I'm putting down a warm on the painting to get rid of the white canvas. Since the pure white is super distracting when you place other values on it, it's just harder to correctly assess how dark or light you want to go with your values. Then a really quick and rough sketch just to place the elements on our landscape. I'm thinking of a castle on a cliff. Of course, very epic, but also like maybe we can create an interesting scene with some characters in the foreground on a shore, like at dawn, maybe like having a secret conversation or secret meeting, things like that. I think it could work. Let's see what will come out of this premise. Roughly scattering some logs, sort of like a set design for this place, and this would be it. I'm not gonna detail things too much at this step. I'll just take care of it during the painting process. Okay, so when you want to start thinking about your lighting and maybe what mood you want to have, easiest is to start with the background and the sky. Pick a larger brush, of course, at first, and start glazing with, a bit of blue or any other family of colors you're planning for the sky. And in similar ways, you can fill all the planes with flat color. This is not going to be the final color, of course, because now we're just starting to get a feel for the values and we're not pushing them too much. That's why the image right now intentionally looks a little bit flat and saturated, because we're just starting to explore those values. And you don't want to have a large value range from darks to lights already on the canvas at this stage. It will lead to a lot of unnecessary contrast in the beginning, and you will be forced to push the lights and the darks to get that extra contrast in some areas. So as I said, try starting from the mid-range and then expand to the final values. So now that you have a little bit of a base for a painting, we can start developing some clouds in the background and kind of get a feel for the mood a little bit better. I'm thinking darker clouds, not much light over there, kind of like it might rain in the distance. It will also help us with the lighting idea, hitting the castle later on and creating some nice contrast with a darker background. The cliff in the middle ground and the one in the background are lit with ambient light from the sky, so we will not have some strong light and shadow contrast for now, but definitely you want to make sure that the top part of the cliff is lighter than its sides to describe the form, otherwise the viewer might not understand what's happening. And for our fortress, you can start by planning the shadows a little bit, and I'm thinking the sun can hit the upper part of it. You can just start by placing it on the top and then diffusing the light as it goes down, as it gets cut off and becomes more diffused. This is not the final, but we're already pushing the contrast a little bit better to create a nice focal point. By the way guys, don't forget you can grab some of my most used brushes for free. The link is in the description as usual. Alright, let's spend some time on the water. The key here is probably not to overdo it, so you just can grab any brush really and start punching in some darker values to start amping that contrast and also sell the idea of water. Most likely the waves will be hitting those cliffs, of course. Most likely the waves will be hitting the cliffs as well. I'm not going to spend too much time on this particular area, and you probably noticed that at this stage you can jump through your whole painting and describe areas with form, texture and so on. So the process is not as structured as it was in the beginning. More information for the rocky area, you can show, for example, how the layers of rocks differ for color and also how the form turns in some places. Now you have to be subtle with it just because the lighting scenario is quite soft and diffused everywhere. Besides our fortress where we have some direct light. In the foreground we have a shoreline and you can start describing that as well. If you have some good references, then you should pick colors and information from there, of course. I will just put down a little bit of a textural look to it to sell the idea that there are pebbles, sand and maybe dry branches and things like that. The fortress on the cliff needs some detailing and more information in general, of course. We can start by quickly adding some design elements. Really, again, here it will help a lot if you have a bunch of references. You can find a ton of castles and medieval fortresses to be inspired by and create your own design. I also try and integrate it a little bit better in the environment. Maybe some grass and ivy might help to blend it in. The value of the castle is still a little bit too light right now, so as soon as I will address the grass on the rock and, well, the rest of the environment too, it will be easier to work on the focal point for sure. For now, let's try and darken a little bit the grass and move on to the foreground. For these elements in the foreground, I don't want to create too much definition there, so usually at first I work with larger brush strokes. You can start by getting a feel for the local values, because the lighting is quite soft and mainly the contrast will happen between the local colors of the objects. A couple of more things before we talk about the final composition decisions. A bit more time with our focal point, some additional textual information just to make things a little bit more interesting. Also, I've sunk it in grass a bit more. I figured it might look cooler. For the characters in the foreground, not a lot of work. These are like props for our general story we're trying to describe. So really, as long as the silhouettes work, it is probably enough information for now. The beach in the foreground, I'm thinking it should be a bit lighter and colder to differentiate it more from our cliff in the middle ground. Alright, let's have a look at some composition ideas and elements I used in this image. So this is our first focal point, and we also have a secondary one with our characters in the foreground. And in between these focal points, we want to make sure that the viewer's eye kind of travels around, is not just stuck in one spot. So we're also having these logs in the foreground, and their purpose is to be like framing devices that leads the viewer's eye back to our castle, for example, and then we have those cloud shapes over there as well. And in order to achieve enough contrast to make sure that our focal point works, we worked with value, color, and shapes. Of course, we have leading lines as well, and perspective, and color temperature differences as well. Even this like little road sort of creates a leading line towards our focal point. Hey, thanks so much for watching till the end. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it helpful. If you did, please consider liking and subscribing, it helps a lot. And I will see you in the next one, coming soon.